Hi everybody, thanks for being here today. This is exciting, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes. So Frank and Don, come on over. Mike, come on over.
Come on down.
Come on down. Thank you very much. And John, thank you. So has everyone gotten a program? We have a fun lineup for today. We're going to take a minute this morning and just acknowledge a couple of dear friends who've left us in the last couple of weeks. Then we're going to move into a couple of thank yous. We've got a nice little something for the town of Brunswick. I would like to take a minute and honor some of our former chairs of our board. We've got at least 1, 2 here, and I know Greg Shea is supposed to be here. And Dick's back there. Yep, we got several. And then I'm going to introduce someone that most of you know. He's here, a Brunswick resident, and we're thrilled to have him. So let's take a minute. People Plus is about community, it's about friendship, and we've lost a couple of dear friends in the last few weeks. So Frank's going to talk on that a little bit.
Because
I'll start crying.
A little bit, that's right. Well, you know, we all know that people come and people go, but when people like Ron Roy go, it leaves a mark.
It does.
And he was here and he played ping pong one day, a week ago.
It was Tuesday.
Yeah.
He ate at the Big Top Deli that morning. He showed up for ping pong, and I went in and said, "Hey, do you have your new People Plus t-shirt?" And he's like, "I got 2.
Yeah, he did.
And he went home and passed away.
And we need to mention Alan, brother,
We do.
and
Will
Arsenal.
who was one of our drivers for VTN. So Ron Roy was here 5 days a week playing ping pong.
Right.
Kathy, how long was Will a driver?
Oh.
15 years?
time.
Yeah,
Long time.
he's been driving since the program started.
At least 4 years, but he also drove for the Cancer Society, you know.
Right, he helped with Meals on Wheels, fantastic guy, died in his 60s. I mean, just way too young.
Sure.
Alan, brothers.
The positive note, they were all doing exactly what they wanted to do.
That's right.
So when you get up in the morning, do exactly what you want to do.
Just like
so much.
Frank, that's what he does every day.
Every day. Except the days I come to work.
Except when Jane's at home. So, because Ron was such a special part of our community here, he was here every day. Our table tennis players, can you stand up for me for 1 second, please? Everyone that has,
Look at him.
And anyone who knew Ron, see this face? That's the face you got every time you looked at him. So can we all rise for 1 second, just take a moment?
Very nice. Thank you, Bob. Thank you very much.
So this plaque is Ron's paddle,
Yeah.
and his wife dropped it off, and it says, Ronald P. Roy. He was a military veteran, so Frank decided to put the dates military style, and he's got 22 November 1945 through March 1st, 2016. A beloved People Plus member, table tennis competitor, and best friend to all. One of our table tennis members, Steve Winter, are you here, Steve? Yes, way in the back, is going to take this and retrofit a bracket on here so that if people come and they want to use Ron's paddle, they can pull it down, play a little table tennis, and put it back in the plaque, and this will be in the lobby. Isn't that neat? So Ron's services today in Augusta, up at the cemetery chapel in one of the military cemeteries up there, and we've got probably a dozen people that I know of for sure that are going up. So they're going to sneak out the back probably a little around 12 so they can make it up for the service at 1 o'clock. Tony, the owner of the Big Top Deli, is going up for that as well because Ron ain't there every day. And he's a member of our board. And Pat, our receptionist, is going to go too because we all miss him. So there's Ron. Okay, thanks. You gentlemen are going to take this today, right? With you up to the service?
Yep.
Okay. Can we pass this back? Thank you. All right. Whew, okay, now that I'm done crying. John Eldridge, we would very much like to honor you in the town of Brunswick. Don Nisley is the chair of our board, and he's going to say a couple words. Dick Brodigam, could you join us, please, as a former chair of the board? Ed, were you a chair of the board or just on the board and really bossy? Come on and join us up here, please, Ed Knox.
Great, thanks, Stacy. Wow, what a great day for a birthday party, huh? It's a lot better than the last time we tried this.
Yeah.
And doesn't Frank clean up well? I hardly recognize him. So, probably other than the, Michael Feldman.
Mike Feldman's right there. We got a little plaque.
Okay, Michael Feldman, come on down. This says, in appreciation for your support and commitment to our members, clients, and volunteers, celebrating 40 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So a lot of people don't know that this organization was on pretty rough times 5, 6, 7 years ago. And there was a group of 5 board members called the Fantastic 5 or 4, I forget.
It was the Gang of 4.
The Gang of 4. Ed Knox, Mike Feldman, Greg Shea, and Ed Harris kept the place floating, and they stepped in when Sig Knudsen was in a coma for 6 months, the former director. It wouldn't be here without you, and we cannot go without acknowledging that. So thank you very much. Dick Brodigam, here to my right, has been on the board. Where's Jean Mayo? Will you just stand for us, please? Everyone who's a former board member of People Plus, we have a lot of you in the room. I'll ask you to stand in 1 second. But Jean Mayo and Dick Brodigam joined the board over a decade ago and served for nearly a decade. So, you know, that's a lot of long-standing loyalty. Dick still serves on several committees, even though he's not officially on the board. And he's one of the table tennis players as well with Ron Roy. So thank you. Allison Harris, I see. Jeanne d'Arc, will you please stand if you're a former board member? I see Martha. Please rise, all former board members. Gordon. Thank you. Please. And Greg, where's Greg? Oh, there's Greg Shea. Come on, Greg, you're supposed to be up here.
What?
Come on. And Susan, his wife, is also a former board member. So hi,
Come on down,
Susan.
Susie.
Hey, Greg.
Fashionably late as usual.
Here's Greg.
So this says, special recognition to J. Gregory Shea
Jay, Greg.
in appreciation for your support and commitment to our members, clients, and volunteers.
Thank you.
Greg has the illustrious honor of having hired me.
Don't blame me, it was a board choice.
And I have one more for Don Nisley. Don's the current chair of our board, and he's agreed to sign on and be my mentor and direct boss for a couple of years, so I'm appreciative of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. Yeah, it is an honor to be chair of the board, and this is just a great event. Probably, other than the senator, the next best thank you should go to the town of Brunswick, because it was 40 years ago that the town of Brunswick started People Plus as the, see if I get this right, Brunswick Area Senior Citizen Center?
Not quite.
Some, almost.
The Brunswick Community Center for Senior
Yeah, there you go.
Citizens.
Okay. No wonder we changed it. Thank goodness we got rid of that. The organization, as you know, has changed over the years and changed the name, and now we are People Plus. But we really owe it to the town, so thank you to the town. And John, I'm pleased to present this award that probably should hang in your office or in the hallway down there or something like that.
Yeah. So John Eldridge and Derek Scrapchansky, the assistant town manager, came for lunch a couple months ago. So most of you are here for lunch all the time. So we managed to get them with a crowd of about 40 people, and that's a picture of that. So that can hang in the town to show the appreciation. Those of you who live in the town of Brunswick, your taxes help support this organization. And so we're very appreciative of that. And the town and the town council continues year after year to fund the organization that they started 40 years ago. And we have maintained true to that mission for 40 years. So thank you very much. All right, gentlemen, you're all relieved. least. Thank you very much. Now, to the man that we've all come here to see today, we have several little gifts for you. And Frank's going to tell a little story.
I'll tell the story.
He's a known liar.
Well, my favorite Angus King story. Way back before Stacy was born.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah. Angus and I were both having babies. Well,
Wow. Not with each other.
we had, I think that's my first recollection of you is we were sitting in a circle in the old basement of the old Forsyth building on Main Street doing Lamaze classes.
1969.
I had been born already. I was 1.
Whoa!
Thank you for that.
So, Angus and I learned to breathe together. That's pretty much it. And we've both been breathing ever since. And I gotta,
You know who else was in that class? Buzz Fitzgerald.
really, I didn't remember
Yeah,
that.
Buzz Fitzgerald.
Wow,
Yeah,
cool.
wow.
And you may or may not know if that there's a book now of some of my columns and
They're available right out.
yeah. Normally they sell for $15, and today only they're for sale for $15. Back when we were putting this whole thing together, we got Jack Gable to do the covers, and then I think Stacy probably strong-armed somebody up.
No, you were so proud to tell me that the governor at that time, because
Oh,
he
the
wasn't the
governor.
senator yet, governor was going to write your foreword.
Yeah.
Right.
So Jane says, in talking about my book, she's with Jack Gable on the cover and Angus King with the forward. It doesn't really matter the rest of this stuff. So here we go.
Thank you very much. So what'd you give us, our books?
Our Right-On group is probably one of the most effective and long enduring and certainly the most creative group that we have here. And this is their I'm going to get this wrong. This is their 4th book, I think. A number of published writers. My book wouldn't exist without the help of the Right-On gang. And another one coming out in June. So we want you, while you're riding around Maine, looking for something to do, you can read that.
This is great. Thank you.
And so that you always remember your friends in Brunswick and where you came from. We've made you a lifetime member.
And with that, of course, comes one of our new 40th anniversary T-shirts. We picked an extra large, but it may be big if you want to size down. You can. So, and we'll have one for Mary. You can take home as well.
Good.
So good. So it took a little digging, but my friend, the new director at the Pajevska Historical Society, Larissa Picard, managed to find a picture of Angus from 1976, which was when this organization started. So we have a then and now of Angus on his plaque.
That's amazing.
I like you still have the blonde swoop. That's nice. So we appreciate your support and for being here very much.
This is great.
So we'll turn the microphone over at this point. I do want to just say when Angus finishes, we're going to take a few minutes. I'll take your jacket. 10 or 15 at the end. He'll have some question time, and then we have our Polaroid camera out. So it gives out instant prints, and you can take a picture with Angus before he heads out, maybe do some group shots, and we'll do Polaroids for everybody. We'll also do some digital, so you'll see them. And then we're going to break for refreshments. We're going to convert the room. We have a really fun slideshow of about 400 pictures, and I guarantee all of you are in them. We're going to have book sales, t-shirt sales. We have a photo booth set up with the Polaroid and more fun pictures. Really great food. The Portland Pie Company, the new pizza place on Main Street, they've donated pizzas for today's event. So we've got lunch, a small lunch, but there'll be some lunch and munchies and refreshments that we'll have you out there, and then we'll convert the room and have a little party after the senator leaves us. So thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Thank you.
I've been through Philadelphia today. I bet you haven't. Normally, what I'm going to do is just share some thoughts about what my life is like, and then you can ask questions and you know what's going on in Washington or not, and how I divide my time and travel and all those kinds of things. Now, normally I get home about midnight on Thursday night. There's a plane from Washington nonstop that leaves Washington at 10, gets to Portland at about 11:30. I come up to Brunswick, and then Friday is going around Maine, doing, like today, I've been at the food bank here, going out to the base, teaching a class at the University of Maine at Farmington in the afternoon, and I'm going to end at Sugarloaf, so there's a happy ending. But I didn't fly last night because, give me a handshake, because this hand last night shook the hand of the President of the United States and the new Prime Minister of Canada. Last night was a state dinner at the White House with the new Prime Minister of Canada, and it was really interesting who they invited from the Congress. I sort of looked around. I'll tell you, there was Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Minnesota. Are you getting the picture? It was all people who could see Canada. There were a few others, but it was an unbelievable experience. I mean, it just, you know, it's just sort of breathtaking to be a guy, you know, from Brunswick, Maine, and you find yourself walking through the corridor of the White House, and there's President Kennedy's portrait, and Theodore Roosevelt, and Nancy Reagan, and you know that Abraham Lincoln walked in that building, and it's just sort of overwhelming. And I took with me Mary's in California with our grandchildren for a couple of weeks. So my guest was Kay Rand, who is my chief of staff, who's been with me. She reminded me 21 years. She was the chief of staff in Augusta. We call her staff for life. And she joined me last night, and Susan Collins was there. It was a really, I can't express how overwhelming this experience is. You know, I found myself pinching myself. And after dinner, the food is beautiful, the arrangements, the flowers, and after dinner, they have what are called the strolling strings, which is, I think they're Air Force. But they're musicians who come and walk through the, you know, playing music. It's really amazing and wonderful. And the fun thing last night was the White House invited a lot of Canadians who have had success in this country. So Michael J. Fox was there last night, the actor. A guy named Bradley Cooper, who my kids know. I don't know. Let's see, who else? Lorne Michaels, the producer of Saturday Night Live, who's from Toronto. All of these, you know, fun people from Canada who have made their lives here in the U.S. So it was really a neat thing. And I'll tell you, the good news is the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, who's the son of Prime Minister Trudeau from our era, was terrific. I met with him in the afternoon at the Capitol, just with a small group, got a chance to meet him and chat. Really made a wonderful speech last night. If you can pick it up in the press, it was very, very good. The bad news is he's younger than my oldest son. I mean,
It makes you feel old.
yeah, there's something wrong with that. But the fun thing is, I found out he was actually, he was not a classmate, but 1 year apart from my son Duncan, who at McGill University. Duncan went to McGill, and so did Justin Trudeau. They were there. I'll never forget taking Duncan the first day up to McGill to Montreal, and we were walking through all the college buildings, and he looked up and he said, "Dad, I think I'm going to like this place." And what he was looking at was the name over one of the dorms, Molson Hall. Well, I've already told you a little bit about the schedule, and in fact, I'm usually here from Thursday night to Sunday evening or Monday morning. And therein lies one of the problems with Congress. Because when I worked in the Senate 40 years ago, it's just sort of fun. I was sworn in as a U.S. Senator 40 years to the day from the day I entered service as a staff member at the U.S. Senate in 1973. So that's a kind of fun, I have this a different perspective. But anyway, one of the problems is when I worked there in the 70s, everybody lived there. Muskie and Hathaway, Margaret Chase Smith before, lived in Washington. They came home to Maine every now and then, maybe once a month or so, but their families were there, their children were there, they went to school there, so the senators and the Congress people had relationships. They were their kids played Little League together, they played golf together, they had dinners and cookouts, and there was a kind of social relationship that doesn't exist. The senators from Wyoming go home every weekend. I'm not making that up. The senators from Colorado go home every weekend. And most of the senators' families are at home. Mary is here. The reason she is that I'm there Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, home Thursday night. And I'm working all that time, so why should she go there? I see more of her here than I would if she were there. But that diminishes the relationship building that is part of getting things done in any group of people. I decided, shortly after getting there, Mary and I bought a little house. And when I say little house, it's literally the size of this room, 950 square feet. It's a living room, couple of steps down, dining and kitchen, and a spiral staircase, and a sort of loft bedroom and a bath. That's it. But it's about 6 blocks from the Capitol, and it's 2 blocks from a really good rib joint. Kenny's Barbecue. So about once a month, once every 2 or 3 weeks or a month, I stop at Kenny's on the way home. They know me now. Peaches is the woman who answers the phone. I say, Peaches, I want 2 racks of ribs, some beans and coleslaw, and I pick them up on the way home. And I have 4 or 5 senators of both parties to just have supper. The idea is to try to do a little bit of the relationship building. And I've had people come, I've now had about 40, I think. And I've had people come and said, I've been here for 8 years, I've seen this guy, but I've never talked to him before. I mean, that's awful. And somebody said, well, who have you had? And I said, well, I've had everybody from Chuck Schumer to Ted Cruz. So that's but here's a good story about Ted Cruz. You hear a lot about him, and he's running for president. You hear that people don't like him and all that kind of thing. But here's why this kind of experience is worthwhile. We were having dinner and chatting and laughing, and he was about to make a speech, one of these humorous speeches in Washington, so we were all giving him jokes and making suggestions. But at 8 o'clock, he looked at his watch and said, excuse me, I have to go upstairs. And I said, how come? He said, because every night at 8 o'clock, I call my kids.
Oh, awesome.
Now that's something you don't hear about this guy who's running for president. And I just think that it's important to try to get to know people, and that's so in my own small way, I'm doing the little rib dinners, and I happen to really like ribs, so that's one of the problems with the place. The other part is that I think I'm right about this. When I worked there before, there were no such thing as caucus lunches. You went and had lunch somewhere. Now, every day, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, there are partisan lunches. Everybody's in their respective corners. Do you see what I'm saying? And it also contributes to this sort of pulling apart, which I really think is too bad. Occasionally we'll have a bipartisan lunch. We had one yesterday. I got there late, and for that reason, I think, they informed me that I'm the chair of the next bipartisan. You know about being late? So myself and Tom Tillis, who's a Republican senator from North Carolina, are in charge of the next the next lunch, and we got to figure out, I don't even know what it means, but we're going to do that. Yeah, ribs. No, I think lobster. I'm going to see if I can't get some lobster down there. So by the way, see my tie? Little lobsters with a little trap down at the bottom. I'm selling all the time. The other piece, my favorite hour of the week in Washington is the Wednesday morning prayer breakfast. And the reason it's so special is, number one, it's a quiet moment in the midst of all the craziness. Secondly, it's the only bipartisan event of the week. It's the only time when you have people from both parties together in a non, business setting. That's nice. But the third reason is especially important to me, because each week, and there are no staff, no press, it's all just absolute senators, and sometimes retired senators will be there. And each week, a different senator is asked to present. And ostensibly, it's about your faith. But it's always autobiographical. So it's a wonderful opportunity to learn about your colleagues. And each week, it's a news. In the last couple of weeks, we've had John Cornyn, Mike Enzi of Wyoming, Tim Kaine of Virginia, and it's a wonderful opportunity to learn something about these people. And I'll share with you some observations. Here's one that you may find surprising. I did. This isn't scientific. I haven't made a survey. But a disproportionate number of U.S. senators come from single-parent homes. Isn't that interesting? And just, because people stand up and they say, well, I was born in Tulsa, and my parents divorced when I was 5, and I was raised by my mother. Or my friend Joe Dolly from Indiana, my mother died when I was 10, my father raised me. Lindsey Graham of South Carolina lived above a pool hall and bar. Both his parents died when he was a teenager, and he sort of raised his sister. And it's a pattern. Not everybody, but it was enough to sort of surprise me, and it was noticeable. The other thing that you'll find reassuring is that these are just regular people. There's nobody there who's royalty. Jay Rockefeller, okay. But even he is a wonderful guy, an amazing guy, considering, he's a Rockefeller. But these are all people who, many of them didn't start out with any intention of going into politics, but all took different odd paths and ended up where they are. And that's sort of reassuring that these are, if we had 8 senators sitting here scattered out, you wouldn't know, they're just like us. And I find that somewhat reassuring. The other thing I should share is I was about to say it's not as bad as you think. In some ways it is, but in other ways it isn't. It's very partisan institutionally. Mitch McConnell and Harry Reid don't like each other. And the caucuses are, in fact, in opposition quite often. Individually, though, it's not that way. Sometimes you hear the press saying it's a toxic atmosphere, poisonous atmosphere. That's not true. And the best way, you can prove this yourself, the best way is to watch C-SPAN if you're having trouble sleeping. But watch it during a Senate vote. The Senate votes, it's not like in the movies where everybody's in their desk and they call the rule. Ms. Baldwin, aye. Ms. Ayotte, aye. No, it doesn't work that way. The bells go off. We're all over the Capitol and in the office buildings at hearings and meetings and in our offices. The vote is called, and a text goes out that says 15-minute vote. And everybody drops what they're doing and goes over to the Capitol and walks in, and there's a big dais, there's a big desk, and there are clerks there, and you walk up to the clerk and give them your vote. And usually, yes or no, or some people do this, some people do this. Everybody has their own little style. I did have one funny experience. I was presiding one day. Don't be impressed. presiding is a chore for freshman senators. So I was presiding one day, and there was some bill that everybody was in favor of, and one of my good friends, a Southern Republican, very conservative, he came up, and I just happened to catch this out of the corner of my eye, and he came up to the desk to vote, and he put his hand out and he said, "How do you vote yes?" He said, "I've never voted yes." He was, I'll never forget that. It's not personally partisan, although there are some those kind of things. But if you watch a vote, what you'll see is people, it's like the dump on Saturday morning. Everybody's coming in, and what you see is you vote, but then there's a lot of milling around. And you see people talking with one another, and you know, it might be, you know, Dianne Feinstein and Orrin Hatch, or me and Harry Reid, or me and Susan Collins, or Deb Fisher of Nebraska. In other words, you can literally watch this interaction going on. It's very interesting, and most of it is business. Some of it is just, you know, chat, but a lot of it is, you know, I'm co-sponsoring this amendment, what do you think, can you help me? And you give them a card and try to get things going. It is sort of funny though, the C-SPAN thing. One day, I'm not making this up, one day there was a vote, a lot of this chatting going on, and I walked off the floor to go back to the office, and my text went on, and it was Mary, and her text said, "What are you doing talking to Ted Cruz?" I said, "What, do you have a drone? What is it?" But it is that I commend you. You know, you don't have to watch C-SPAN all the time, but to watch the votes, it really is kind of interesting because you see the interaction going on. My favorite part of the job, my favorite part of the week is the prayer breakfast. My favorite part of the job are hearings, because it gives me a chance to interact with the witnesses and ask questions. And as the world's oldest freshman, that's me, you get to ask the questions by seniority. So I'm always the last to ask a question, which I like because I can listen to everything else that's gone before and see, you know, what hasn't been covered and what are things not doing. But it's a great opportunity for me to engage in the issue. And by the way, that's the best part of the job. I flew down this morning with a guy from Kennebunk. He said, "How do you compare it to being governor? You know, which is a better job?" And I said, they're just very different. Governor is very satisfying because you can actually do stuff. You know, you can make a difference. You can set the agenda in your one voice. Here, I'm a member of a committee of 535, and it's very frustrating, but you're dealing with really important, complicated issues at the highest level. You know, all my life I've been yelling at the TV. Now I get to yell at the real people. You know, but to sit in a committee hearing and get to cross-examine the Secretary of Defense or the Secretary of the Treasury and all the, you know, the generals and talk about these important issues of war and peace and how, you know, what our policy should be is very, it's stimulating. I mean, I'm a guy that's curious about things and I really like to dig in, and the questioning is my favorite part. I will tell you one funny story about being a governor and being a senator. There are 10 of us, 10 former governors. We have a caucus, former governor's caucus, also called the extremely frustrated caucus, because we're all people that are, you know, used to getting things done and working and, you know, bipartisan. I went over to Mitch McConnell, it's a true story, and said, I mentioned to him, you know, we're forming a former governor's caucus. And he said, "Well, Angus," I can't really imitate his accent, Kentucky accent. He said, "Well, Angus," he said, "I've noticed that if you have a former governor who's now a senator, and you ask them which job they like better, if they tell you senator, they'll lie to you about other things."
Boy, is he right?
I thought that was a pretty good story. So what do I do all day? There's no typical day. The intense activity is Monday evening, there's some votes, and then Tuesday morning early through usually into the evening, Wednesday, Thursday, and then, as I mentioned, everybody goes home Thursday night. The days are, you know, usually 12 hours plus. And there's no effort made whatsoever to coordinate schedules. So, for example, one day I had 5 hearings in the same day, 3 at the same time. So then you have to sort of prioritize and figure out, okay, I'm going to go to armed services at the beginning and then energy later on, and get a chance to ask the questions that I want to ask. So there's a lot of hearings that go on, and then there are a tremendous number of meetings, mostly with people from Maine. And it's like the other day, the Maine Bicycle Coalition, or the Maine Nurse Anesthetists. How did I do? Anesthetists. Or, you know, Maine groups that come down, the realtors, or the home builders, that car dealers. They come to Washington. They have what's called a fly-in. So home builders from all over the country come, and their assignment is to go and visit their home state senators and congressmen. So a lot of those kind of meetings. Meetings with staff to try to sort through, you know, the complexity of what it is we're trying to accomplish, what the amendment should look like, how we're doing, whether we're talking to other people. Then there are a lot of sort of internal negotiations. I'm working with a group of both Democrats and Republicans to do some stuff on regulatory reform, and so meetings on that. So a lot of those kinds of things all day. Often there are, this White House dinner was an exception. You could probably do something like that every night, not at the White House, but you know, the car dealers have a reception downtown or something. I practically never do that. But I usually end up going home 7:30 or 8. Mrs. Stouffer cooks my dinner. And I go home every night with a 3-ring binder. It's in my bag right now, that has in it tomorrow's schedule, memos on every meeting coming up the next day. Then there's a section it says responses needed or something like that. These are things that I have to sign off on, a letter to the Appropriations Committee or a grant application for something or other. So there's that. And then the final section is letters. And as a citizen, I used to not like it when I would write my representative and I'd get a letter back that said, "Thank you for your thoughts, I will bear them in mind as I do my work." I didn't like that. So I decided everybody that writes me is going to get a real answer. So I have 5 wonderful young people whose sole full-time job it is to write letters. And we get about 1,500 to 2,000 letters and emails a week. Wow. Isn't that astonishing? From Maine. We don't even count the ones from other places. But from Maine, between 1,500 and 2,000 a week on everything you can think of. Some of them are big groups about one issue, Iran, but a lot of them are individual things that people see on the news or whatever. And so I feel if they take the time to write, they deserve a real answer. So what happens is these young people draft the letters, and then I edit them. Sometimes, rarely, I say, good, check. Usually I can't stand it because it's going out over my name. I end up editing and redrafting. But that's, so every night I'd say an hour to an hour and a half of sort of homework. And then I drop and start the next morning. So that's sort of what the world is like. I'll end on this. Mary says I say finally too much. It gets people's hopes up. But I'll say finally. A note about what is getting done and not getting done. There really, what I've learned is there are sort of 3 levels of legislation, of bills, of laws. The top are the big, controversial, important things that we're not getting done. Immigration, gun control, budgets often, the stuff you read about in the paper, that we're deadlocked, partisan, that parties can't agree. But there's a second level of pretty important things that are getting done but get no publicity. For example, 3 weeks ago, a month ago, we passed a total rewrite of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act that hasn't been touched since 2007, and it was totally bipartisan. Came out of the Education Committee 22-0. Last year, we totally rewrote the Veterans Law and the Federal Job Training Law. All of these were at a bipartisan basis. All of them got votes of 80 or 90 votes. But because it wasn't conflict, it didn't get any press. So you only, the conflict sells newspapers. That's not I'm not being pejorative, that's just a fact. And so we have these very important bills, but they don't get much press. Then there's a third level of very small things that are getting done all the time. A good example is a couple of years ago, we learned that the Food and Drug Administration does not allow veterinarians to take scheduled drugs to farms to treat animals that need them. It's very hard, yeah, ridiculous is right. It's very hard for a cow to come to the office. So Jerry Moran, who's a senator from Kansas, Republican senator from Kansas, and I put in a bill to basically fix that. Damn if it didn't go through. Awesome. House, Senate, President signed it. Now, nobody knows about it except the veterinarians think I'm a hero. But other than that, I mean, the point is those kinds of little things that are very important to some people and not, of national importance are happening. So that's a long way of saying, in some ways it's worse than you think, but in many ways it's better than you think. And it's an amazing experience, I can tell you. It's every day I sort of have to pitch myself. So why don't I stop there and take whatever you have in the way of questions. Yes, I have a lot of frequent flyer miles. Yes.
What support is there currently for strengthening Social Security at its current levels and or expanding its benefits?
Isn't it odd I would get this question from this group? His question was, what support is there for strengthening Social Security or improving the benefit structure? I think the challenge before us is preserving Social Security. I could really bore you with a lot of numbers. Social Security actually is in pretty good shape. Social Security is actuarially sound into the mid-2030s. Medicare is the problem. Medicare is spending much more money than is coming in. And we need to work in both areas. Social Security, the actuarial problems with Social Security could be corrected with fairly not dramatic changes and nothing affecting current beneficiaries, nothing zero, but changes 20 and 30 years from now. The problem is every year we don't do it makes it harder to do it. And the closer we get to 2033, then it'll be a crisis. And Congress generally waits for it to be a crisis. I don't know of any, well, I shouldn't say that. There are some proposals to make vouchers for Medicare and that kind of thing. I don't think that's going to happen. But I do think there are going to be some changes. For example, possibly increasing co-pays for people who make more than $200,000 a year who are on Medicare. I mean, it's a question, if you don't have enough dollars, you put them where they're the most needed. So there are those kinds of, this is my hook, I guess. Let me take one or two.
You have 5 minutes to be up.
All right, let me take some quick ones. Yes.
Hi.
Oh, hi.
Oh, hi. How are you? I haven't seen you for years.
I'm around.
I'm part of the Right On Writers, Senator, and I hear a little birdie say that you like poetry.
I do.
Is that something you would like to share?
Well, I'm a big fan of the greatest American poet ever. Not Robert Frost. Robert W. Service. A bunch of the boys were whooping it up in the Malibu saloon. The kid that handles the music box was hitting a jagtime tune. When out of the night, which was 50 below, and into the din and the glare, there stumbled a miner, fresh from the creeks. dog dirty and loaded for bear. That's poetry. That's Robert W. Senator. Yes, ma'am.
What is your stand on the right to bear arms?
I start with the Second Amendment. I mean, I think it's pretty clear. However, if really interesting, Justice Scalia, who just passed, very conservative justice, wrote a really good opinion about 5 years ago on the Second Amendment and the right to bear arms. What he said was that no amendment is absolute. For example, we have free speech, but you're not allowed to yell fire in a crowded theater.
Right.
And he said, in his opinion, that limitations on felons and people who with mental illness are reasonable and are allowed under the Second Amendment. That's basically where I am. In other words, I think background checks are just common sense.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I'd have to take it one at a time. But I start, as like I say, I start with the Second Amendment.
What are our chances of
Sandy,
defeating
I
Obama?
love you, but we gotta get him out of here.
Yeah.
Speaking from the other side, you were talking about fly-ins from Maine.
Yes.
I was involved in one of those fly-ins with some physicians many years ago when Bill Cohen was senator.
Oh, no kidding.
And let me tell you, I was very impressed.
Well, it's wonderful to have Maine people. And by the way, every Wednesday morning at 9 o'clock that we're in session, we have coffee and blueberry cake in my office with me and the staff for anybody from Maine who's there.
Maine?
Anytime. Of course they're Maine. They better be. But if you're there vacationing or visiting the kids or whatever, if you're in Washington, Wednesday morning, 9 o'clock, come to my office in the Hart Senate Office Building, and it's always fun. We have a map where people put their pins in where they're from, and it's really fun. Let me take one more, and then I got to go. Yes,
How
ma'am.
large a staff do you have?
How large a staff? I have about 20 people in Washington and about 15 people up here. The people in Washington, I've mentioned the young people that help me with the letters. Most of those are policy people, research, writing. Up here, it's interesting. This job is really two jobs. One is what I've been talking about, voting on amendments and things. In Maine, my staff principally deals with individual Maine people's problems with the federal government. You didn't get your VA check, or my favorite was recently we got the medals that was owed a 93-year-old World War II veteran. We pried them out of the Pentagon, and I gave him his medals after 70 years. I mean, that was really cool, and that's the kind of thing we do.
And you got Marilyn a headstone for her husband who died in war.
Not in a war, but they were
Died away.
So a lot of what the staff up here, there are about 15 people, are these kind of individual problems, and that's part of the job, to help somebody get their Medicare or something that isn't happening. I got one more in the back.
And then we're done.
Do you find many Republican senators that acknowledge the concerns about global warming?
That's a really good question, and the answer is they're starting to. Privately. That's the problem, is for some reason, and I've never understood why this issue became a partisan issue. But right now, it's a very partisan issue, but there are Republicans. I carry a little card in my jacket pocket. Let's see. I carry it with me everywhere I go. I've got a whole bunch of them, and it's called Climate Change in a Nutshell. And on one side is 1 million years of CO2 in the atmosphere. And I know you can't see it in detail, but what you see is for about 1 million years, CO2 varies between 180 and 250 parts per million. Then you see the graph go up. That's 1860, when we started burning fossil fuels, and we're now at 400. The highest has been for 3 million years. And the last time it was at 400, the oceans were 60 feet higher. The other side of the card is the correlation between CO2 and temperature. And if you look, you can see the two lines follow each other. CO2 goes up, temperature goes up. CO2 goes down, temperature goes down. So I hand these to the doubters. I handed one to Jim Inhofe. He's a senator from Oklahoma who's very, and he looked at it and put it in his pocket. I don't know. But I sense, just in the last year, that there is less denial, and now we're finally starting to get some conversation about, okay, what do we do? And in fact, I had breakfast yesterday with some military people. They said, to avoid the controversy, we no longer talk about climate change, we talk about sea level rise, which is undeniable, and it's happening right here. I really do have to go.
You do have to go. Thank you.